All right, welcome back to another test with the DT65s and the DT85s. As you can see, I'm going through the start banner of the McCurry Island. Now we are on the Chain Chomper course. Now this course, oh boy, I'm glad I got the badge because I don't know if I want to do it again. It is basically like the castle to castle course route where you go through the outskirts of the town, and then you go in through the town up into the castle, except instead of making the right, going back down, looping around and doing it all over again, this time you actually go up over the temple KOM too. And so as you can see right now, they're both basically the same. The only difference between the two is there was about a 3 or 4 day time span between when I did the DT85, which I did that one first, and then the DT65. And as you can tell by the graphics, Zwift updated. And part of their update is when you're in third person view, as you get faster, the camera actually pulls in closer. So there's more camera action to it. So that's why it looks a little bit different. But they are basically the exact. I started them as best I can at the exact same spot. So that way the kilometers are pretty well matched. Now, one thing I will note is when I did the DT85, I intended on doing both rounds back to back, but holding 250 watts, that's what I set my trainer to, using the Wahoo app. I set it to 250 watts. Holding that for the time it took me to finish this course was brutal. I was suffering. And so I opted against doing the second lap for the DT85s, which I was going to switch to the 65s and then do that round. So I ended up, stopping it, but it still looks like I have the 2 laps there. But the data is basically the same. And so I'll pull up the Strava numbers so you can see where we're at. And so as you can see, we're going through the KOM banner, starting to go through, and again, still neck and neck. And this is where, when it comes to wheel choice, you have to ask yourself, what outcome am I looking for? And in this case, what I was looking to understand is, do the wheels matter when it comes to climbing and when it comes to descending? Now, everybody knows steep climbs, the lighter wheel's always going to do better. But what does that look like on some of these middle climbs, some of these, so-called draftable climbs? Because as you can see, the castle climb is not bad. We're at, we hit 4% on some of the steeper parts, maybe even going up to like 6-8% for a second or two. But it's not a sustained, it's not a steep, sustained, heavy climb. And so as we round the corner, going up over the bridge, we hit that 8% for a few seconds and then back down. And as you can see, the DT65s are starting to pull ahead ever so slightly. I mean, probably, I wouldn't say more than a second or so ahead of the 65, the DT65s are pulling ahead by about a second or so of the disc wheels. And the only real way to tell is if you look at where the marker is on the map. You'll see on the HUD, the HUD pops up ever so slightly sooner for the DT65 than it does for the DT85s, and the position is ever so slightly ahead for the 65. So you're gonna gain a little bit of ground when you're climbing the castle climb. But if you're a strong climber, the difference between the two really isn't much. And as you can see, looking at the averages on the ride stats, I'm actually doing a little bit more power on this climb. Unfortunately, my second time around, I just freshly waxed my chain. It felt great, and for whatever reason, my power numbers were reading 10 to 20 watts high. So I had to adjust the Wahoo app to try and compensate to see if I can keep it in that 240-ish range. And so I ended up running a little bit higher wattage. So that's likely the reason why this climb was such a big difference. But again, we're talking about, a couple watts, nothing major. And so if you're a good climber, you shouldn't have an issue. If you're a strong climber, you shouldn't have an issue with keeping up on the disc wheels for this segment. Now, this part right here, when you get into this, flat part on the backside of the castle, this is where I was kind of wondering, like, could the disc, could the rider with the disc catch up? And so as you can see, I'm still a few seconds ahead on the 65s. And at this point, as I was going through this, kind of realizing, like, oh, the 65 is holding its own. It's, if you're, like I said before, if you're a strong climber, if you're a good rider, we're talking about a couple second difference. You'll be able to catch up, no problem, But now you have to ask yourself, am I wasting watts? Am I burning watts playing this game of catch up after some of these climbs? And so now we, make the right coming out of the castle, and we're on our way to the Temple KOM. And boy, oh boy, did this bring back flashbacks of bad memories from tiny races where this was the only climb. This was the only thing we did on that stage. It was stage 4, and it was like, the stage was like a couple kilometers long, and it was just the climb itself. And so as we start going up the climb, you can see that I'm still, a few seconds ahead distance-wise. I'm still about the same, within 100 meters, or not going beyond 100 meters of each other. But again, I'm finishing a segment with the 65s when the 85s are just starting that segment. And so at this point, if you're riding, you're pushing hard, you're starting to get fatigued. As you can see, my rider with the 65s is now a little over 100 meters ahead, because he'll change the 0.1 kilometer, and then now the disc changes to 0.1, and so on and so forth. And this is where, again, when you're fatigued, how much can you push through? Yes, these are draftable climbs, but if, and also both sessions, we're using the same weight. I wanted to make sure that every time I do this, I'm using the same weight, which is at 84.7 kilograms, I think, because that's what I had when I initially did it, even though my weight has changed. When I do this again, because there's one more test I want to do for part 3, I'll set my weight back to 84.7 just so I can do that and then obviously reset it. But as we're climbing up the temple on the, on this gravel road, dirt road, or technically through the grass, you got to start asking yourself, when you get to this point in a race, yeah, we're only 8.5 kilometers in, but when you're fatigued, when you're climbing, if you're not a good climber, you're a heavy, or you're a heavy rider, and people are starting to pull away from you, and you got the disc, and they've got lighter wheels, you've got to start asking yourself, was the disc the right choice? And this is where, again, the question I wanted to answer was, is it better to climb faster or to descend faster? Now, there's a video that if I find it in my YouTube history, I will pin it as a comment or put it in the description. However I can do it, I'll do it. But this person was doing the same thing, but in real life. He was showing the difference between climbing faster and descending faster. And so this is kind of what I wanted to answer. Again, what I wanted to answer here in Zwift. And so as you can see, I'm already coming up to the KOM on the DT65s. Now the first time I did this round with the DT65s, my computer crashed right around here, and I was devastated, emotionally devastated, because I worked so hard to get to the top of this climb, and I didn't even get to the KOM in order to get a PR, which I figured I would. And so as we get to the banner here, or the arc for the KOM, you'll see some confetti, because I did end up getting a new PR and just holding 250-ish watts, 240 something watts, averaging 242, it looks like, for 20 minutes. And so, and again, that was me also trying to slow myself down to stay within the same range as I did with the disc wheels. And so I crossed through the banner as well with the disc wheels. And so as we hit the top of this, again, keep it maintaining my pace. Now, most people will get to this part. It's still, just just climby enough to where you have to continue to push through. You can't just, draft. But as you can see, I'm already 200 meters ahead with the DT65s. And so again, you have to ask yourself, if you're tired, if you're, if your muscles are sore, your legs are crying out in pain, your saddle is, screaming back at you because you're not in a good position, you have to ask yourself, were the disc wheels the right choice? Were they the right choice? And when we start descending, and really start descending, this is where I was completely flabbergasted. So as you can see right now, the DT65 is going pretty fast, but we're hitting a flat spot, the DT85s. We're hitting a flat spot, starting to level out, and that's where, lost some momentum there. Got down to about 42 kilometers per hour. I don't remember what the DT65s were, but we'll ignore that for now. As we start to descend, now we're hitting, 56 kilometers an hour, 57 kilometers an hour, 58, 60, 61 on the DT65, 62. And I think, getting close to maxing out there. So 62 kilometers an hour, 63 kilometers an hour for the DT65, I touched 64 for a second there. With the DT85s, let's see if I can get to 65 kilometers an hour with the 65s. I don't think so. I think I stay around 64. And so with the disc wheels, I hit 64 kilometers an hour. So there we go, hit 64 kilometers an hour, 65 kilometers an hour. So I am going a smidge faster, an absolute smidge faster. And again, I'm still 200 meters ahead with the DT65s. And this is where I could not believe the performance improvement in these wheels, because I thought heavier wheels, better aero, the disc wheels absolutely should perform better descending, even if it is on gravel, because it's the exact same, just about the exact same conditions. Same bike, same rider, same weight, same height, all that stuff. But the 65s are still holding that 200 meter gap. And again, if you're descending, you're getting tired. Oh, now we're within 100 meters. You're descending. Oh no, it's still 200. Still 200. If you're descending, you're tired. Are you gonna actually pedal at 3 watts per kilogram? Or are you going to let yourself just kind of draft off of everybody else and try and stay in the gap? Now, group dynamics may play a role. I don't know. When it comes to descending, maybe you'll descend faster with the disc than the 65s. That I don't have a good way of testing without doing an event. And I'm trying to control as many variables as possible when I'm doing these tests. As you can see, the 65s are already on the boardwalk there, getting ready to, essentially 3 kilometers away from the finish, getting ready to cross back into the village, where the 85s are just making its way through the boardwalk, just, still getting there on the boardwalk. And again, still maintaining that almost 200 meter gap all the way through. And again, I'm trying to pedal at the exact same speed as possible, even though I am holding a couple more watts, about 3 more watts on the 65s than I am the 85s. And so that, again, that may play a role, but I don't think 3 watts is going to hold you at 200 meters ahead, especially with, in these kind of conditions where you're not drafting. You're not going to use, you're not going to do this on a breakaway, because pack dynamics, the group is going to catch you. You have to go significantly faster for the group not to catch you on that kind of a effort. But so far, those DT65s descending did an absolutely excellent job staying away from the disc wheels. And so I honestly think when it comes to racing, especially your standard Zwift race that is not flat, that is not 100% flat. And by flat, I mean like Tempest Fugit, I mean like Richmond, some of the Richmond courses where there's, 50 meters of elevation gain, like that's flat. It's still not perfectly flat, but that's as flat as it gets in terms of Zwift. I think the flattest route we have is like 25 meters of elevation gain, which is the Volcano, or one other one. But 1.9 kilometers to go, and the disc wheels at this point are just far enough out of the reach where you have to ask yourself, like, can you bridge this level of a gap? And I'll talk about that exactly how far it is, but can you bridge this level of a gap when you're, 30 minutes into a race or 27 minutes into a race, 14 kilometers in, if you're just Zwift racing and you're not, an A+ rider, you're not a, someone that does a TTT in the morning and ITT and, for lunch and a, Z race for dinner. Like, if you're not that person, can you bridge this size of a gap? Are you going to put in the effort, or are you going to wait on the group or try and find a group to help you bridge that gap? And so this is the things you got to take into consideration when you're riding this kind of race. So as we start to get to the end here, about 1.2 kilometers away, again, that gap is not closing. It's just not closing. And again, when I went through this initially, I could not believe that I was able to stay away with the DT65s. I honestly thought the disc wheels would have easily caught up on the descending, because there was enough steep descending where the impression that the wheels are heavier and heavier would have allowed me to get down get down those descents faster. But no, it didn't at all. And so as we come up to the end, again, 600 meters from the finish line with the DT65s, you'll see as we start to cross with the DT85s, the kind of time gap that there is that was built up on this on this route. And so 300 meters to go as we start to approach the start of the final sprint. I'm not going to actually sprint. I didn't sprint because I'm trying to keep things as duplicatable as possible. And so I just roll through the sprint segment with 100 meters to go, just kind of going with the flow. And then as you can see, as I'm getting to the end of the sprint banner, there is when I'm just starting the sprint segment with the DT85s. I'm that far back. Now, the duration shown on the screen there, you're not going to see it for the 85s. Don't worry about that. Again, that's why I'm going to go through the Strava numbers. And so finally finished with the DT85. So here we go with Strava. And as you can see, I finished the route without the lead-in in 25 minutes, 47 seconds on the DT65s. And with the DT85s, I finished it in 26:01, which is a difference of about 14 seconds. So again, 14 seconds faster with the 65s. And so as we look at the individual segments here, you can see that my wattage was a little bit higher on the DT65s. And so my times were a little bit faster, but not by much. And so my wattage was only a couple watts higher, about 3-4 watts higher, averaging. And then when you look at the Castle KOM, I was only 4 seconds faster on the Castle KOM, about 18 seconds or so faster between the Castle and Temple KOM segment. And then for the Temple itself, was about 6 seconds faster. And so again, not that big of a difference on an individual segment, but at the same time, when you look at the speeds, my speeds were nearly identical on each one of them. Only, decimal points of a kilometer off. And we saw that when I was climbing. You could see that I wasn't that far off, for the individual segments as I was riding. And so what I ended up doing was putting that data into ChatGPT to find out how much more power would I have to do if I wanted to get the discs to keep up with the DT65s. And if you look at the graph here, or the chart, it really only is a couple watts. 4 watts on the Castle KOM, 9 watts on the Temple KOM, and about 7.5 or 7.2 between the two segments. And so looking at the finishing time for the descent, so I started on the DT65s at 21 minutes and 4 seconds. Now that's the official end of the Temple KOM. Same thing with the DT85s. I started at 21 minutes and 5 seconds. And so as we get to the bottom of the descent, I ended at 29:11 with the DT65s, which is 8 minutes and I think 6 seconds difference, versus the DT85s, the disc wheels. I finished at 29:10, which was a difference of 8 minutes 5 seconds. So what we're talking about is a difference of literally 1 to 2 seconds descending. So yeah, the DT85s did make up some ground on the descent, but not enough. Just not enough to convince me that the 85s are the right wheels given the circumstances. Now, on a route like the Castle to Castle, sure, use a disc. You're not gonna lose on, on performance. But at the same time, like you saw in the beginning of this video, you're not really going to have that much an advantage. And so is it worth the amount of drops it costs? Is it worth it if you're not doing time trials? I don't know. You have to ask yourself that and see how you perform. Now, the next video that I'm going to do is going to be more of a pack dynamics video. My plan is to run the Tempest Fugit route and see if I'm going to do it as a solo ride. So it's just me. I'm going to do 2 laps of it and see if I can do it where I can get the proper times. And then also I'm going to do it with the Robo Pacers so I can sprint through the pack and see how the pack dynamic goes with those 2 wheels. Now, if you missed my tiny races from yesterday, Saturday, go check it out, because I basically recreated that experiment where the first 2 races I did with the DT65s and the second 2 races I did with the 85 disc wheels. So again, check that video out. But for now, I will catch you guys on the next race. Hey guys, it's Miguel from That Thing You Just Watched. Hope you enjoyed that video, whether it was topic on nutrition or racing or a combination of both. Feel free to come back. I will continue to put out videos like this and continue to showcase what you can do with smart nutritional strategies, combining that with racing, because that is what this channel is all about. And feel free to check in if you want to see more racing. Click on wherever the link's at, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next race.